You know, flies are like time capsules. As fly anglers, the flies that we fish chronicle the sport. They represent our history, past and present. Each one has its own story. Each one represents a person and a place. And each one has its time and place on the water. To open one's fly box is to open a book, the contents of which possess the power to transport its owner, evoking memories of past endeavors while providing hope for future outings. Since childhood, I've always been fascinated by artificial fishing flies. In fact, if anything, it was the flies that got me interested in fly fishing, more so than the fish. Kind of like putting the cart before the horse. Hi, I'm Al Dare with Mickey's Bait and Tackle. We'll be celebrating our 70th year coming up. And today we're going to take a journey to look at the Taiwan On, sponsored by the Iroquois chapter of Trout Unlimited. This would be their 8th annual. And they'll be representing a group of very diverse fly tyers from all around the area, mostly the Northeast. It should be interesting. Most importantly, this event provides support for Project Healing Waters, Casting for Recovery, and Carpenter's Brook Fish Hatchery. Very worthy endeavor, no doubt. But let's not forget also the important mission of Trout Unlimited, and that is to help conserve and preserve and protect our clean water resources, which not only benefit the trout or the angler, but really provides a lot of help for the future of clean water for the entire planet. That often goes overlooked. So let's take a walk down and see what the 8th annual Taiwan On, represented by the Iroquois chapter of Trout Unlimited, has to offer. Thanks again for being here. I'm Al Dare. Eighth annual Taiwan On. Today I'm here with Michael Oskaya, and he's with LI Flies. Does LI stand for Long Island?
It does, yeah. It's pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, it's we're based out of Eastern Long Island from the Hamptons, and
nice place.
Yeah, it's about I've had that name for like a couple years now, and we tie commercial orders and private, so it's what I do for full time. It's what I do for a job. So
is most of your stuff oriented towards the salt surf?
Yeah, being from Long Island, a lot of saltwater, striped bass, bluefish, false albacore stuff. As you see, we also tie some freshwater, like largemouth bass, smallmouth bass orientated stuff. But we try to stay away from all the small, like trout stuff. We like the big hooks, nice and easy. Nice and easy to see, tie. Yeah, exactly.
I hate doing small flies, although I appreciate them, but tying them, it's another thing altogether. Yeah, Mike, I've been to the Hamptons in the east end of Long Island. It is really interesting. I was there on my 21st birthday, swimming in the ocean at night. This is, of course, before Jaws.
Yeah.
So, but that is really interesting.
Jaws is based off of Long Island. They filmed it in Massachusetts, but it's based off of. Now I can't even remember the one though. I don't even know if there's been a shark attack on Long Island. But it's certainly, we do get, it does get a little eerie. I don't swim at night personally myself, so it's a little brave of you,
I wouldn't do that.
But I guess a couple of beers makes it a little bit easier. Yeah.
How's the striper fishing been?
It's been relatively good. So we have, our striper fishing starts from like around early April is when we start catching our first fish. Now we have resident fish that are around almost year round. You can catch them in certain spots. But it's been pretty good. Like we had a phenomenal fall, and I'd say from October, November, you'll literally see the beach right in front of you will be full. You'll have a couple hundred bass move through at a time, and they're blowing up, throwing bait on the beach and everything. So it's been pretty good. I think it was probably better when I was a kid, and striper numbers are. I think it's slowly on a decline now. Sometimes it could also kind of fool you. You have a lot of you'll get a lot of fish in a particular size range, and then like let's say 30 to 36, it'll be absent. Now, we get the big fish every year, but they're offshore. A lot of times the party boats and stuff target them, and they really hammer them really hard.
That was going to be my next question. Is it accessible as a fly angler from shore?
Yes.
Can you wade the beach and actually cast for stripers?
So Long Island is probably one of the best spots you actually have to fish for striped bass from shore. I mean, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, all great spots. But Long Island, there's a lot of public fishing. So you got your beaches, you got your back bays. So not only do you have your, we have our ocean front, but we have a lot of adjoining bays on the south shore of Long Island. So a lot of all that water can be either accessed either from shore or kayaking, stuff like that. But no, without a boat, you could fish year round, and you could do really well.
That's
yeah,
good to know.
we have our false albacore that come in, and I'm talking about like you could have these fish 10, 20 feet off the rocks. So you don't have to be a professional fly caster either, and you can hook up on a, you don't also have to pay $500 to go out on a fly charter.
That's
you know
nice.
what I mean?
Yeah, it's
so
affordable.
it's definitely one of the best places to saltwater fly fish, like from shore in the Northeast, I think.
I really like this pattern. I see you still use a lot of natural bucktail, but
yes.
yet you're into the synthetics as well.
Yeah, so like for instance, this fly right here, I tie a saltwater version, we call it the mullet marauder. Now it's nothing that I can hardly say I came up with it. It's virtually, I tie them a lot in the salt with a flat wing tail, and then essentially it's like a bucktail deceiver where there's a couple bucktail collars, a little bit of marabou, and then we finish it off with some Senos laser dub for the head. And it kind of just creates a little bulk, so you'll actually kind of tie it directly in the middle, and then you fold it back, and it just creates that bulk. Yeah, it's almost like a hollow tie, but imagine if you tie it in the middle. So you'll have some fiber coming back, and you have some fiber coming forward.
Yeah, I just learned about that today, the hollow tie technique.
So this is a hollow tie using squimpish hair.
Okay.
Squimpish hair is I'm actually on the squimpish staff. It's a synthetic hair, which I'll show you here, for instance. It's a synthetic fiber that kind of mimics bucktail, essentially, but you can get it up to 13, 14 inches long. Now here's an example of a prime bucktail that you would use for hollow collars, for a hollow fly. But A, they're expensive to get, and B, it's very hard to get them consistently. So we use certain materials like this, which you can also hollow tie, and you can essentially get a fly like this, which has big bulk. It has the shape of a bunker, but yeah, if you feel it, there's almost no weight to it.
Wow, that's amazing.
So you can throw these on a 9-weight or a 10-weight rod, and you can throw it all day.
Yeah.
As opposed to more conventional synthetic bunker flies.
Tied right there?
Yes. So there's one hollow tie of bucktail,
okay,
and then there's 2 hollow ties of this synthetic material. It's called squimpish hair. Yeah.
It's really something.
Yeah, and it's more durable than bucktail, and you can get it in all sorts of colors. The only little trick is you have to use a little super glue you can feel. Instead of building your flare with the thread, like you would normally do with a bucktail, you would tie your thread in front of the bucktail, never on top. You would slowly build your thread dam in front, and that causes the bucktail to lay down. With this stuff, you fold it back, and you would take a little bit of super glue and you apply it around the fly, right around where you fold it back. And so you can adjust it. You can have it flared really far open, so when you're stripping it, it kind of keeps its shape.
Sure.
Yeah, or you can, like here's a fly that's mostly tied. This is like a pike style streamer, But you can see how long this hair is. It's almost virtually impossible to get bucktail that's that long.
Oh, yeah, and it feels like a really nice tapered.
Yes. So the other thing is you can take this hair and cut it in half, and then you can take it in your hands and kind of play with it, and it naturally retapers.
Very nice.
So it doesn't, even if you cut it like this with an abrupt end, it'll still naturally retaper if you kind of play with it in your hands a little. So yeah, it's a guy out of Connecticut, David Nelson. So we're on their pro staff, and it's a great material,
Hey, thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem.
Always
Thank you. I appreciate it,
All right, Mike.
So, and also, in case anyone's interested, we actually do live fly tying on Twitch, which is a streaming platform. So it's mostly orientated towards video games and stuff like that. But there's a whole fishing community on Twitch, and we do a live stream every Wednesday and Friday. So I'll sit down for 4 or 5 hours and I'll tie these flies, and people interact with it. So so it's interesting.
It is
so
very
something that not
interesting.
a lot of people know about. But
we know. Hopefully, we'll change all of it.
yeah, thank you. So I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Enjoy it.
Hey, I'm Al Dare. We're at the 8th annual Taiwan On here in Syracuse, New York. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of tyers here doing big salmon flies, saltwater flies, pike flies. It's great to see that. Incredible techniques. A lot of the new synthetics are being incorporated. But I found a trout fly tyer that you really need to see this person's work. I'm here with Dom Greco today. Hey, Dom.
Good
to see you, brother. Yeah, trout flies. You know, we're all trout fishermen, especially in Syracuse. We got the 3 big streams, 9 Mile, Butternut, Chittenango, and we are throwing all kinds of trout flies. My particular passion happens to be soft tackles, and I noticed you really do a nice job with the soft tackles.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will put a soft tackle on just about any nymph I tie. Characteristics in the water are wonderful. Effectiveness seems to increase when you tie the soft tackle, and it's a great looking bug, to sum it all up.
I interviewed John Shaner here a couple of years ago, and he's a soft tackle aficionado, and he tied a beautiful soft tackle for us. But yeah, I mean, a lot of anglers, a lot of trout fishermen, I don't think really know a lot about soft tackles, but I see you incorporate that into some of your pheasant tail patterns. You do a lot with quill bodies. Talk to me a little more about some of the favorite patterns that you've dealt with over the years.
I'll speak to materials first, and natural materials have always been my preferred. I think behavior in the water, characteristics, tradition, all that good stuff. Probably the 3 favorites would be definitely pheasant tail, peacock, and Hungarian partridge, or really any kind of partridge I could soft tackle.
The building blocks.
No doubt about it.
Total aside, you can live as a fly fisherman, throwing maybe a little snowshoe rabbit here, you could live with just those 4 materials.
You really could.
I swear.
And it's all about catching fish, and those materials are going to pretty much outperform any synthetic or any unnatural material.
They're beautiful though too. They're really aesthetically pleasing. When I'm looking at some of the slides with some of the flies that you've tied, they are really very aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, and incorporating a quill body, what you mentioned, is always, for me, a very natural way to create segmentation, a durable fly, and a fly that frankly looks very good.
Now, Frankie Adino, you said, was one of your mentors. He's from Utica, and I've sat and tied with Frankie. He's very innovative. He's kind of like the man behind the curtain. A lot of people don't know about him.
Very much, and I credit Frank 100% with teaching me how to tie 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And a lot of the flies that you see me tie are very similar to patterns that Frank knows, and knows well, and knows that work.
Yeah, I was looking at that Comparadon.
Yeah, that quill body Comparadon. When I first learned to tie that fly, it was at the hand of Frank, but that was also the first fly that allowed me any success in catching fish in the West Branch of the Delaware.
Oh, what a fishery, too.
Yeah.
Boy, they say if you can catch fish there, you can catch fish anywhere.
Yeah.
I believe it, too. Man, I've walked away from that piece of water shaking my head more than once.
Well, I did as well until the day I got on that stream with Frank. And Frank not only told me what to put on, but where to throw it and when to throw it. And
he's down here all the time, that guy, and he knows that piece of water. He really does.
he does.
Yep. So it's mostly dries and wets that we're looking at here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will tie a fair amount of mayfly dry flies, some traditional, some a little bit of modern flair to them. I do a significant amount of nymph fishing, and as we discussed before, the nymphs a lot of times contain pheasant tail at its core, or peacock, or a combination of both. But essentially searching patterns that allow me to cover a lot of water and figure things out pretty quickly.
Do you do any of the traditional Catskill dries at all?
I do.
Yeah.
And it's probably the most pleasing tie that I do.
From an aesthetic.
Yeah, from an aesthetic standpoint, and again, tried and true, those patterns work. And
The history is amazing. How can you live in upstate New York and not delve into the history of the traditional Catskill school? You got a front row seat. I mean, come on.
Absolutely, and really learning, and again, going back to Frank, understanding aquatic entomology and stages of life, and how important color is, and silhouette and shape and size. I can't say enough good things about him, so I appreciate you bringing him up.
Yeah, well, I think he needs a little more credit than he's willing to accept.
Yeah,
Very modest.
Very modest.
Hey.
Also see a damselfly nymph there that I found. I spend a lot of time fishing in the Adirondacks and some of the lesser known ponds and lakes, and that little damselfly, I call it a mini damselfly nymph, has been quite a producer for me over the years.
Now, you've got a website, and I see you'd have a slide presentation. People can go online and see some of the flies that you've
Yeah,
tied.
the easiest view would be Instagram. It's Adirondack Fly Company on Instagram. There's also a Facebook account, which is Adirondack Fly Company on Facebook.
Okay.
And you pretty much see and interact with me however you want. I'm happy to share my patterns.
Well, we've
Share
learned
any
from the
advice.
best, you know. We all share as fly tires. Folks, you need to check this gentleman's flies out. Go there and see what he has to offer. They're really not only aesthetically pleasing, but they seem that they would be very productive. I can tell just by looking at them. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you very much.
All right, brother.
Well, appreciate your time.
You got it.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, we're here at the Taiwan Trout Unlimited Iroquois Chapter 8th Annual Taiwan with Sam and Dimitri with the Fly Fishers International, which many of you used to probably know as the Federation of Fly Fishermen. They've had a major shift in their marketing strategy and their name change in the last few years. We want to ask these ladies a couple of questions about that. I know Sam guides on the Delaware. So how's it going with this new marketing strategy? Is it working out for you?
It's working out great. We're working together with Brick House in Montana, and they are helping us doing a whole bunch of videos and marketing, and improved our website unbelievably. They have we have a new learning center, if you haven't been on our website recently, where you can download all kinds of information as far as casting, fly tying, conservation issues. It's really pretty amazing, and those modules can be used for presentations at your clubs. Okay, and if you end up going through the casting, there's a whole bunch of different sections in the casting module that will get you ready to be able to take the certified casting test. So it's really very, very good. It's worked out great, and we ended up changing our name so we could be more friendly with the younger people. When they heard the word federation, it sounded old.
Interesting. Yeah.
It
There's
sounded
all marketing,
old.
no doubt.
Right.
And also you're getting more of a global reach now, too.
Oh, we have unbelievable in worldwide. The casting certification, especially, has gone unbelievably well. They just had a testing in Japan, and I think they had 17 people from around the world that went to Japan to become certified.
Japan, you know, when I think of Japan, I think of Leon Chandler, who was the executive at Portland Line for a long time. He was like the Johnny Appleseed of fly fishing, internationally speaking. And I think there's even a statue of him, if I'm not mistaken, in Japan. They actually erected a statue of the guy. That's how much of an influence he had on the fly fishing community. But he was very supportive of the Federation of Fly Fishermen when he was with Portland Line. I remember distinctly him being very supportive. So
Portland donated a lot of their older rods and reels to us with lines, which we ended up giving out to our club so they could use for the kids.
yeah, outreach has always been the forte of this organization, recruiting new fly fishermen.
And supporting them.
And
Education. I believe that Fly Fishing International is more of an educational organization. Some people think of it as a conservation organization, but I say if you get somebody involved in fly fishing, you've started a conservationist.
yeah. Well, it's in a way
Hand
it
in
is.
hand.
It's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's an environmental act. Just the act alone is an environmental act, no doubt. I mean, what Trout Unlimited stands for, it's stewardship in terms of the whole clean water resource. You can't have fishing without that, obviously. They sort of, we've always considered Fly Fishing International, Fly Fishers International, the sister organization of TU. So how do people learn about how to get involved with Fly Fishers International?
Well, it's word of mouth. but it's going to shows and letting people know that it exists and promoting it.
But if somebody wanted to join, where would they go to join?
They could go online
Okay.
to Fly Fishers International, and you can join there.
Okay. Well, great. Let's keep up the good work. That's all I can say. Thank you for being here today.
And thank you for having us.
You didn't mention about the camp.
Okay, and we
want to tell you.
also work with Friends of the Upper Delaware, and we have a fly fishing camp that the kids can go to. It's a sleepaway camp, and they get a Orvis rod, reel, and line to take home, and
They stay there a
They
week?
stay there for a week, and it's a fabulous educational thing. And
Is this
we
gonna be-
sponsor them
Okay, is this going to be yearly?
yearly so
Okay,
far.
It
so
has been. It has
By the
been.
time we produce this, it might be past this, so it'll be next year then,
Yes,
possibly.
yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You
Thank
can
you.
take that.
Yeah, I'll put this in
Put
the
it in the
store.
store.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Great. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're at the Taiwan On with George Daniels, and he just did a lecture. Hi, George, out there.
Nice to see you.
So we're just talking about Kelly Gallup being a streamer aficionado, and
Yeah.
your book, Strip Set, obviously would incorporate some of those patterns and some of the patterns of your own, I imagine.
Oh yeah, a lot of what I've learned. I spent a lot of time in Michigan. That's Kelly's background. So a lot of the same people that he basically developed those techniques with, or some of the guys that passed their lessons on to me. So yeah, it's one big round circle.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love tying streamers. I enjoy fishing the heck out of them. Of course, it's always the fly of last resort for most fly fishermen for some reason. They'll hit the water with their nibs and their dry flies and all the other stuff, and then as the last resort, they'll put a streamer on. And it's unfortunate because I think a lot of fishermen are missing out.
I agree. Yeah, as a former team member of the USA, I've seen a lot of competitions won with streamer strategies. So it shouldn't always be your last ditch effort.
I mean, big fish obviously want to eat bigger fish, and it just goes to show you that they do work. Joe Bates, that wrote the book on
Yep.
streamer fishing back in 1950, it's been one of the most incredible pieces of work, really.
Yep, without doubt.
A lot of the open patterns, the traditional patterns that were done back in the day.
Exactly.
So tell us a little about your involvement with Team USA.
Yeah, I'm a former competitor.
Yeah.
Competed for about 5 years.
Yeah.
Did okay. Did some world championships. Won a couple of nationals. Then got out of that. Started to coach for
Yeah.
a couple of years. Had a great team coaching. Then had spent a couple of years as a coach for the youth team.
Interesting. Yeah. Now, how are the guys faring these days? I know a lot of the international competitions that I remember reading about, it was always the European anglers, the Polish, the Czechs, that were cleaning house. How are the American teams doing now?
Within the last 3-4 years, the youth team has been winning a lot of the competitions. The adults have been medaling, so we've broke a lot of ground.
Yeah, I
on
imagine.
that,
I get that impression that we've come up in the ranks.
Oh, without
in the
doubt.
last 10 years or so.
Yeah, we're always contenders.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of new at it, I imagine.
It is. I mean, when you look at internationals, I mean, some of these, the Czechs, the French, I mean, they've had basically youth programs and organizations based around competitions for about 30 years.
Yeah,
We've only been doing it for less than about 10 years.
that's what I figured.
So now we're getting
Yeah.
a good, strong youth program that we can kind of filter into the adult program. So
Okay.
it's coming around.
And when you say youth, what are we talking age group?
We're talking like 14 to 18 is kind of the age group for the United States,
Okay.
or for the international fly
Yeah.
fishing championships.
Interesting. Now, I notice a lot of the techniques involved with a lot of these tournaments. It's long 11-foot rods designed for like 3-weight lines or 2 3-weight lines with long level leaders using like a tungsten jig fly. Is that still a predominant,
It is.
most preferred
Yep,
method?
without doubt. Yep.
In terms of productivity?
Productivity, catching fish. I mean, it's not always about the size of the fish. It's usually fish numbers,
Yeah.
and nymphing is usually your number one option. And the whole idea is just fishing small flies, having good line leader control, but being able to sense very delicate takes. And what they've done is they basically have to streamline the system, so it's basically like spin fishing with ultralight. What kind of like the ultralight systems did with spin fishing. They just really all refined the nymphing to like a very lightweight system that has very delicate presentations and strike detection.
Very precise.
Incredibly precise.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're really after fish, to catch fish, that's one heck of a way of doing it. You know, I'm old school. I'll be honest with you, George. I like to cast. You know what I mean? I like to see that weight forward line or that double tapered line fold over nicely, the tight, you know. And I just, I high stick once in a while with nymphs and stuff. I tried the 11-foot rod. It just wasn't my cup of tea. I know it's really productive.
Yeah.
Really productive.
Yeah, to each their own.
Let's talk about some of the books what's this one here? Let's talk about that book.
The new book?
Yeah,
Is,
all right.
I came out with a book called Dynamic Nymphing after my competition. It was basically focused on European nymphing, but within the last 5-6 years, you kind of evolve, hopefully, as an angler. So this is just talking about the lessons I've learned beyond my first book, and basically kind of blending European nymphing with traditional American tightline nymphing and indicator strategies. But instead of just saying we're going to just fish European nymphing, we're basically looking at the conditions and deciding what the best technique is, rather than being biased with one approach.
Yeah, I mean, a good nymph fisherman will clean up every time, in my opinion. And over the years that I've been fly fishing since I was 16.
3:30. So we got 30 minutes before we start that raffle. So 30 minutes before we start the raffle.
It's always been my impression that this is kind of like the sixth sense of fly fishing, developing that ability to detect the strike with or without a strike indicator. If you have that sixth sense, you will consistently produce fish.
Without a doubt.
And I mean, I fish them all. I fish dries. I like to see the visual take.
Yeah, me too.
I fish streamers, obviously, as we said before. But if you become a good nymph fisherman, there's no doubt most of the time you're going to come home successful as an angler. How about that strip set? Now that's predominantly streamers.
It's all streamers. A little bit of night fishing with mouse patterns, but you know what I love doing? I travel the country nonstop. We all have our approaches. I'm very biased in some of my approaches, but what I'd like to do is give readers kind of an overall viewpoint. So, like, fly fishing is very regional. You go to a region, everyone's kind of got their patterns and their approaches for the waters that they fish. So when I wrote this book for 4 years, I traveled all throughout the lower 48, just kind of picking up tips and tricks from people, from the Michigan folks to the folks fishing the tailwaters in the south to the northeast, even the west coast. But just kind of a nice all-around viewpoint approach on streamers.
And I see a lot of the streamers in here are the modern ties.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
It's incredible, the materials that they use, a lot of marabou, a lot of synthetics. They're big, gaudy, get in your face kind of presentation, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I still think, you know, being an old school guy, I still like to use a small streamer once in a while, like
Absolutely.
a size 8 or a 10.
Absolutely.
You know, in a traditional pattern like a Mickey Fin or
Absolutely.
or a Black Ghost. But these bigger patterns designed for bigger aggressive fish under some circumstances, or a lot of circumstances, they're just amazing.
Yeah, they work.
It's a nice book. Well, thank you very much for being here, for making the trip, and
My pleasure.
hopefully
Thanks for having me.
our paths will cross
Yeah.
down the road.
All right, thanks so much.
You know, this is the best part of the day for me here at the Taiwan On, and I got to tell you why. Traditional wet flies really, really are what thrill me for some reason. I guess because growing up as a fly tyer when I was in my late teens, that's what we tied. We tied the Royal Coachman, we tied the Professor, traditional wet fly. I'm here with Fred Klein today, okay, with Grizzly. Is it Grizzly King Flies?
Yes.
Grizzly King's Flies. Fred, thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
At
Thank
the
you.
Taiwan On, and I am mesmerized by some of the flies that I'm looking at here.
Oh, thank you.
And they're so colorful. I mean, I know they're designed to catch fish, but they also catch fishermen.
They sure do.
You know?
They're when the kids come by, they're attracted to them like Christmas tree ornaments. They're so colorful and shiny.
Yeah, flies today just lack that ability. They're so natural looking, which is great. Hats off to the realistic patterns and everything else, but there's something to be said for old school wet flies. The Mary Orvis book, the Ray Bergman book on trout that featured a lot of those patterns. Oh, what is it? Is it just our history, obviously. You know, we're going back how many years?
Well, Charles F. Orvis fishing with the fly was 1883. Mary Orvis Marbury, his daughter, favorite flies in her history was 1892. And Ray Bergman's trout was 1938, before the Second World War.
Yeah.
And there's a multitude of books, but these are our favorites that show oil paintings of fly plates of the popular flies of that age and era. And you can see a lot of the same patterns on the blind eye hooks from the 1800s, then the Ray Bergman style pre-World War II that had the eyed hooks. Just different style, and they got smaller as the years went by, but they were very elaborate, very artistically designed. A lot of them from Maine, New York, Pennsylvania, the New England area, which we're fortunate to live here because we have the history all around us.
A front row seat.
Yes.
Yeah, without a doubt. What was I going to say? Oh, this country, I mean, when you think about going back that far, we were a brook trout nation. Let's face it. The brown trout was just getting itself going. People fished for brook trout. Brook trout obviously being attracted to fancier, colorful patterns.
Yes.
And then once the brown trout came into focus and started to propagate a lot of our rivers, they became difficult to catch. Then we had to start going to some of the more natural-looking presentations, which led these to take kind of a back seat, which was kind of unfortunate. I mean, these will still catch brown trout. Don't get me wrong. But I am truly fascinated by the history and the elaborate construction and colorfulness of some of these flies. And you know what's cool is you're doing them on old school hooks too.
Yes, these are all the hooks that I tie my flies on are the Mustad and Son hooks made in Norway, which date back to pre-1900.
Yeah,
so the blind eye hooks, the large Limerick hooks,
the
Sproat, the Virginia Bend are all from back in the 1800s and 1900s.
It's for some reason to the trained eye, when you look at a traditional wet fly, if it's tied on a modern day hook, it just doesn't cut it.
No.
I mean, when you look at Mike Vala's book on wet flies, every fly in that book is tied on an old school hook. I think it's important to have that.
It is.
I mean, you know, if you're going to use jungle cock, use jungle cock. There's no substitute.
Right.
I think the same is true for the hook.
Yes.
It has to be a traditional looking hook.
A traditional hook with a bronze finish and a big barb on it. It looks
Huge barb.
like a harpoon. You're going to harpoon a whale with it.
I don't know, it just adds to the aesthetic. Now, most fishermen would probably say you're crazy, but you and I are wet fly, old school wet fly aficionados.
Yes.
We're trained to see that, and it's not about catching numbers of fish. This is about the art of fly tying.
Yes,
really,
it is. There's J. Edison Leonard, his book Flies. He sent a letter to Carrie Stevens asking her for some of her fly patterns to put in his book. And she said, well, I haven't tied flies in a number of years, but you know as well as I do. My flies were tied primarily for catching fish, but also for catching fishermen. She said all of those elaborate colors are really to lure fishermen to buy my flies.
Helen Shaw, she wrote a book entitled Flies for Fish and Fishermen, and I think she meant that in the title, that these flies are not just for catching fish.
The first lady of fly fishing.
Yeah.
I have a wild trout stream behind our home, and it's a Class A wild brown trout stream. And if I get down there in the middle of the summer and nothing is happening, there's no hatches going on, it's the dog days of summer when it's hard to catch trout, clear water, low. And I'll take a colorful wet fly like one of these Ray Bergmans on a size 6 hook and swing it like the old wet fly tradition. I'll pick up trout every three swings with those big size hooks on the colorful flies.
Unbelievable. Because they haven't seen it.
They haven't seen
They
them.
don't see them.
You won't find them in the Orvis catalog.
Yeah.
Although the Orvis family were the first to develop these flies.
Oh, God, yeah. I love looking at the older catalogs for that reason. LL Bean, the Orvis cat, that's all you saw. Traditional streamers, traditional wet flies, maybe a few dries, Catskill style dries.
Yeah.
But that was it. This was the dominant force back in the 40s and 50s.
It was.
Yeah, it was really quite an era of fly fishing, to be around back then. Oh, my God.
Absolutely.
I only could dream about being in Colorado and Montana back in the 30s and 40s.
Oh, my.
I could only dream about it. The fishing must have been unbelievable.
I dream of going into the Appalachian Mountains in Pennsylvania in the 1700s with a fly rod and fishing virtually virgin, unfished waters for brook trout in Maine, which was close. That was unfished later because it was so far north. And the stories of the early fishermen up there it was incredible. 9-pound brook trout.
You see the photos, some of the from the 1800s, the strings of trout. You know.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'll tell you. Oh God, I'm thrilled just to be here, Fred. Thanks. Thank you very much.
It was my pleasure.
All right.